A few days ago, somebody reached out to me and asked a question to say, Flo, how long does one take to settle abroad? What a question. And it's one of those questions that I have never really asked myself. And it's been 3 years that I've stayed in this country. But it made me reflect on a lot of things. And part and parcel of the things that I was reflecting on was the fact that there is a big difference between arriving in a country or arriving abroad. Everyone else can arrive or can get abroad, but it's not everyone who settles straight away. And timelines when it comes to settling abroad are so different. And it is because of so many reasons, starting from immigration status, the pathway that you choose to relocate with can hinder or can actually influence the timeline that it can take for you to settle abroad. And it can span as far as family support, financial support, where you're starting in terms of experience, in terms of support financially, emotionally, and even physical support. And part and parcel as well of why it may take others longer or others shorter to settle abroad is even due to pressure from home. And I'm going to be unpacking all of those things in this video. So all the more reasons why you need to stay tuned and watch until the end. Because if you are abroad, it's one of the things that you have to think about. And also, if you're thinking, I want to relocate, settling is quite key. Because when we talk about settling abroad, we're talking about when you start seeing where your future is going, financially, emotionally, and also future goals, where you are abroad, and also planning your retirement back home. If you're some of us who obviously dream of one day retiring back home. So it's very important how long it will take you to settle and what is it that you need to do for you to settle. So let's get right into it, where we are digressing, why it takes others longer to settle abroad and quicker for others to stay or to settle abroad. A big welcome, everyone, and let's get right into it. When one does relocate abroad, guys, it comes with a lot of real pressure, I must tell you. Pressure from the society that we come from, pressure from our families and friends. And I must admit, even pressure from yourself if you're not careful. And mostly, or most communities or most societies do expect those that would have relocated abroad to make it within months. I don't know, I used to be told by friends and family who relocated way back. They used to tell us, oh, so you think money grows on trees abroad, or you can just pluck it off trees just like leaves. But I didn't believe it until I relocated abroad and I could see the expectation, and I do still see it even now. But then it's always important to do a reality check. So part and parcel of the expectations as far as settling is concerned is people expect you really to all of a sudden become financially stable, to start really investing back home straight away. They do expect you to live a certain lifestyle that could show maybe in the way that you dress, the way that you look, the pictures that you do post. And even from the word go, some are already expecting you to be taking holidays and vacations. But guys, I must, now that I've been in the diaspora, I do live in the diaspora, it takes a lot of work for you to even get there. Some do expect you to straight away start driving a nice car, not just an ordinary setup. I always laugh when I look at my car and I go like, that's the car that I've always had from the time I came to the UK. And it's a car that is about 15 years old. The expectation, obviously, when I do speak to people that are close to me is, oh, probably she's now driving a really nice car. But I must admit, there are other hidden battles behind the scenes that people in the diaspora do fight, do have to constantly be going through. And we're going to talk about it all in this video, because those are some of the things that do affect the timeline in which you settle abroad. And by saying this, I'm not saying everybody that does relocate abroad does struggle. Some really do settle in quicker. And again, we will be cross-references to the things that I said I will be talking about that can hinder or can influence the timeline in which one does settle abroad. I have about 6 things that I want to talk about in this video that I do feel are the major ones that actually hinder the timeline in which one can settle abroad. The first one, of course, is the immigration status of the person that is relocating abroad. I think I've made videos where I've spoken about pathways in which one can relocate to the diaspora. And by the diaspora, I'm not necessarily talking about the UK because that's where I live, but this can be anybody, anywhere, Australia, Canada, America, anywhere. These things are broad and these things affect everybody. For as long as you are an immigrant, then immigration status can hinder the timeline in which you can integrate or can settle abroad. So I'll give you a few examples. I relocated on a skilled worker visa to the UK, but it's a visa that came with restrictions as to what I can do, which industries I can work in. And I do remember when I first came to the UK, I was on a minimum wage pay. So when I compare it to the do's and don'ts of my visa, where I cannot access public funds, I've got no recourse to public funds as part and parcel of my conditions. What that means is it might even take me longer to settle, to get to build financial base, have savings, and start investing and living comfortably abroad. When you compare it with somebody who relocate with a higher earning job or a higher skilled work or role, they are earning more. They can afford certain things better. They can even settle in quite quicker. Part and parcel of what I want to talk about when it comes to immigration status, there are people who relocate on asylum. They go abroad on asylum. What they can access in terms of opportunities, in terms of education, in terms of housing, in terms of anything abroad is not the same as one would access if they are on a skilled worker or on a work permit. I'll also give you another example. If one has relocated as a student, it's another pathway, a brilliant pathway in which one can relocate. But obviously, if one is a student, the main aim is they're going to be studying probably for the next 3 years, for the next 4 years, depending on what sort of a program they are studying. Remember, they are studying as an international student. So what that means is, in as much as they are living abroad, they are a student, they are forking out thousands and thousands of dollars to fund for their education. So you cannot compare that person with somebody who is on a work visa. You cannot compare that person as someone who is on a dependent visa. I'll give you another example when it comes to students. The number of hours that they can work per week is so limited. So even the timeline that they would take, they can spend 5 years abroad and still not having any savings because they work 20 hours a week and still not be able to do much back home. But a lot of our communities would just say, oh, their child or so and so is abroad. When I talk of students, or when I talk of people relocating on a student worker visa, I'm not limiting it to just the young ones or those ones that have just finished school. Why? Because when I relocated abroad, I realized even people in their 30s, in their 40s, in their 50s are actually relocating to come and study. It's a brilliant pathway, and I'll share with you opportunities and which countries one can actually relocate to and study, at least paying at least lower tuition. And it's a brilliant pathway with options. So I'll be dropping a few videos on this channel, so all the more reasons why you need to subscribe to this channel so that you won't miss out on these opportunities. Because on this platform, we do talk about life abroad, life in the diaspora, but we also do talk about success, struggles, and also opportunities, not just in the UK, but everywhere else. So all the more reasons why you need to be on this channel if you're looking to changing your life abroad, or if you're looking into relocating. As of 2025, this is the place where you need to be. So the second reason why people can settle at different timelines or different scales when they relocate abroad is the fact that some people are starting from zero. When I say starting from zero, it can be people relocating with no qualification. And a very good example of that is how people came with the care worker visa. It's not everyone who had a degree prior to coming on a skilled worker visa, because this was a low skill opportunity to relocate to the UK. So qualification wasn't really a prerequisite. So some people have actually relocated, but you find out that they don't even have their GCSEs. So if there is any chance that they want to upgrade, they'll have to start going back to school or going back to do their functional skills, doing their access to whatever program that they want to do going forward. So what that means is, I've said it earlier on in this video to say, some of these jobs or some of these opportunities that people relocated with are minimum wage opportunities. So the only way that one can then forge a life for themselves going forward is when they upskill, when they upgrade, or when they take the time to really climb up the ladder within the same industry, which takes years and years for some people. this has actually reminded me of a conversation I was having with someone who has lived in this country for about 35 years. A big shout out to you, Andy Shelley. You opened my eyes when we had a conversation previously, because I know she's going to watch this video. So she said to me, when they came back then, 30 years ago, when they came, the only way in which a lot of people would then go on to acquire their paperwork in this country was by eventually having to go back to school, earn a skill, and then get paperwork to really stay legal in the country. So what that meant is they had to be strategic with what sort of courses they would go on to do. And this brings me to one of the questions that I'm always asking if I come across somebody who has lived in this country for over 20 years. I always ask, why is it that a lot of migrants back then, we've stayed here longer, 20, 30 years ago, most of them, especially Africans, they're either a nurse, doctor, paramedic, or a social worker. Why was that so? And one of the things that they highlighted to me was the fact that it was a strategic move. They had to pick that career path that would always be on the critical shortage list. And I think I'll do a video on the critical shortage list and how we can debunk some of the jobs really that are suited for if one is an African, because of course, now that I used to think the sky is the limit and opportunities are there for everybody. But when you are then living in the diaspora, you realize there are some industries or some opportunities really better suited for you if you're African, Asian, or whatever background you come from. So you have to sometimes have these conversations with people that have been abroad for a long time. So some people are starting from zero qualifications. Some people are starting from no recognition whatsoever for your experience that you have had abroad, where that industry does not recognize prior experience. So whatever industry that you're going to join, you're starting from the bottom. You're having to upskill, you're having to write exams. And this can take years for some people, depending on whether or not your organization or the job that brought you is funding for all of that. So that could mean people take longer to settle abroad. The third thing I want to talk about is lack of support. Some people come from families where they're the very first person to relocate abroad. So they relocate, they've got no family support whatsoever where they've gone to. I think I shared in my previous video, if you haven't watched it, where I was celebrating our 3-year anniversary abroad, please do go and watch that video, because we were actually giving insight into some of the reasons why we chose the UK. Part and parcel of that, it was because of family support, and that is very important. So when you're relocating somewhere where you've got support, be it of family and friends, it becomes so easier. They point you in right direction. Some people have relocated to countries or communities where they have got no support whatsoever. They are having to figure out everything for themselves. And that may sometimes take you longer to settle. Sometimes you take longer to access certain things because you've got nobody to really point it out to you. But I must say, we were quite fortunate relocating to the UK because most of our family are over here. So they would really guide us. Oh, this is what you need to do. Or these are the starter jobs that you have to look out for. Especially for my husband, because when we relocated, he didn't have a job. I was the one who had the job because I was coming on a care worker visa. But he was coming as a dependent and he was pointed in the rightful direction. But there are things that you can do if you've got no support from family and friends. And all the more reasons why platforms like this one, where we share information, where we share guidance. And it's also part and parcel why I decided to share my journey abroad with all of you, because I know there are people who have got nowhere to reference, nowhere for support, inspiration, and motivation, but they really want to take a leap of faith and relocate abroad. So joining communities, being on platforms that do share the same values, share the same goals as far as your relocation journey is concerned, is quite helpful. And I will put the link in the description, some of the migrant groups that I know where you can actually go, and then nowadays, thank goodness for the internet, because people can actually post their questions, post whatever that they want to ask about a certain community, a certain industry, certain opportunity, certain rules and regulations. Where we live in an age where visa rules are consistently changing, it's very important that you ask for support, that you ask for guidance, and that is very key if you want to really integrate and settle quicker in the diaspora. The fourth reason that I want to talk about that could hinder how people quickly settle abroad is pressure from home. A lot of people do underestimate pressure from home. I'm African like that. I come from a family where supporting family is very key. I was supported to be where I am. It was because of people that supported me. So a lot of people don't realize the pressure that comes with. And part and parcel of what I mean when I say pressure, sometimes it's not like people are asking for money, but when you relocate abroad, the situation that you left back home, how everybody back home is looking up to you for support, for you to really change life or lives for everybody in your family, in your village, and where you come from. And that sort of pressure sometimes can hinder how quicker someone can settle abroad. Why? Because at times you have to support so many people back home. And by support, I'm not saying doing big things or big projects, but it's just making sure everybody probably has got food on the table, roof over their head, clothes on their back, making sure that siblings are going to school if you've got younger siblings or other family members that still need support in that way. And all these things are quite necessary. I think I did a video where I shared how I do pay black tax and why it's so important for me. It's part and parcel of what made me, and I can never neglect that. But also, when you understand that will slow down how you settle, you are prepared for it. You've got things in place to cushion you, to prepare you for what's to come, and you give yourself the grace, you give yourself the time. You're not seeing yourself or as someone who is failing. You're not comparing yourself with others who are ahead of you or who are doing better than you, because you would know, you would fully understand what's drawing you back. It's not because you're not working hard, but also it's because of where you're coming from. The fifth thing that I want to share with you that can actually hinder how quicker or how faster people settle is the cost of living abroad. The comparison is always going to be there of how people relocated back then 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and they were able to build businesses back home, buy so many properties back home, start companies and do all sorts abroad. But that was 20 years ago. For people that are relocating now, I must admit and share with you that even when I came in 2022, I would get so much out of £10 when I would go to the grocery shop. But the same £10 now won't even buy me breakfast for the week. No, it's because of cost of living. So all those things, but then cost of living and how salary adjustments are working is not tallying as you would expect it to be. So some of the things that can hinder settling in for people or settling abroad. And for some people, they would be like, is it worth it relocating? But it's when you do certain things, then you'd give yourself leeway, you'd give yourself grace, you'd give yourself time to say, well, I'm going to give myself 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and I will be where I want to be. Last but not least, this one, a lot of people don't want to admit that it is a factor that can hinder settling in: unstable shifts and jobs. I think I've shared with you on this platform, for those of you that have been following this journey, I've shared that I've changed jobs along the way. Part and parcel of why I changed was because of how unstable the shifts in the nature of the job that I started off with. I'll just quickly share with you how it used to be. So if someone is working in domiciliary, fair and fine, when you get your contract, it's a 44-hour contract, which is good. But there are things that happen in that job, unlike other jobs, that can actually result in you earning lesser, but still doing the same job. I'll give you an example. Sometimes you're working in domiciliary, and then clients may die or clients may go into hospital. What that means is, where you are supposed to work maybe 9 hours in a day, you may end up having to work 6 hours or 7 hours, but you're still working the same number of days. And unfortunately, how things work abroad is you're paid hourly, you're paid for the work that you actually do. Very few organizations would still pay you a flat fee, but I did see that difference. And I think I do remember at some point, the turning point for me was the one time that I earned £1,300 2 months in a row. And I was like, for how long am I going to live like this? I've got children, I've got everything else that I need to do. I've got parents back home whom I'm looking after. I've got other responsibilities. This will not be on. So I quickly realized that, but it's not everybody who gets an opportunity or an option to go to another job, because it's getting stiffer. The jobs are not as they used to be before, due to so many reasons, which some of them we do talk about them here. Changes in immigration laws and stuff are influencing how people are accessing these jobs, and also the nature of the job that we do, where you need sponsorship for you to be able to do certain jobs, would actually leave a lot of people stuck with those jobs where the shifts are consistently fluctuating. So if you're earning that much and still your bills are there, they're waiting for you, that can lead to you maybe going into debt or just living from hand to mouth. And that can then affect the timeline in which you can settle and begin to start to have savings, start to invest, and start to maybe think about starting projects, be it back home or over here. So it is a reality. The struggle is quite real. Last but not least, part and parcel of what can hinder the timeline in which people settle is comparison and shame. Unfortunately, it doesn't. I thought it affects mostly the younger ones, but even adults. Comparison is always there in the communities that we live in, where people give each other pressure. Sometimes people can tell you, oh, I'm looking into buying a car, or I've bought this car, and then you're feeling like, we're in the same diaspora, but why is it that we don't have a nice car? It takes discipline for you to know that maybe it's not the time for me, or maybe I have to wait a little bit. I do remember I was talking to a colleague and they were asking me to say, oh, there's a wave of people really going on group holidays abroad. And it's been 3 years and I haven't had a holiday abroad, because I know where I'm going. I know my limitations. I know the time shall come. I always say to my children and those that are close to me, the time shall come where we'll do all these things that we have always dreamt of. And sometimes when I decide to go deeper in conversation with my kids, I always say there were times when we never thought we would be living in the diaspora or we would be living in Europe. But now is the time that we are here, and we never know where we will be 2 years from now, 5 years from now. So a lot of people, they get hindered because they're in constant comparison. They are consistently making decisions based on what their friends, what their colleagues or family members are doing, which really has got a big impact on the timeline in which one can settle abroad. Some give each other good pressure, good, nice comparisons could really influence other people to work on themselves, work on their qualifications, dream bigger, work harder, and achieve things, and therefore settle quicker. But for other people, it can lead them in an opposite direction, which we will talk about in this video. So the question still does remain, how long does it take for one to settle? We've talked about all the reasons, and there is even others more that can affect the timeline in which one does settle abroad. What can I say is, on your own risk. Your friend might have relocated 6 months ago, a year ago. They've already bought a house. They've already bought a car. They've already got their papers sorted. They've got their ducks in a row. What I can say to you is, give yourself grace. Know your purpose. Probably your pathway was never supposed to be the same as your friends. And sometimes it doesn't mean that by being delayed or by being a bit of a late bloomer, it doesn't mean you won't bloom. You will when your season does come. And it's something that I've grown to understand. And I'm also in that season where I am just embracing and living for the moment. And sometimes I always listen to advice that is given by people that have been abroad for a long time. They always say that you guys who are in now, give yourself grace. Look after yourself. Self-care is very key. It's very important. Do not overwork. I never used to understand why they would say that. But it's when you hear, oh, so and so just collapsed at work and died, or they died in their sleep because they were overworking. All the horror stories that you hear. And it's quite sad. And it is a reality when you live abroad. So what I can say is, even sometimes settling in doesn't mean peace. So what I can say is, for as long as you're happy with your pace, with your progress, with where you're going, you're seeing light, seeing those small steps that you're making is actually steps in the right direction when it comes to settling in. Your time will come, you will reach those goals, you will achieve those targets that you've set for yourself. Also, just as a word of encouragement, if you have watched this video this far, I just want to say something that is very important when it comes to settling in. You could have come through a certain pathway, but again, if it's not opening the right doors for you or the doors that will take you to the next level, never shy away from starting over again. The bravest thing or the most courageous thing that you can do abroad is starting all over again. And the sooner that you realize I have to restart all over again, the better you can be. Sometimes it even goes as far as maybe your circle. If your circle is not serving those goals, is not taking you forward, is not making you progress into settling abroad, change that circle, change that career, redirect your dreams. If it means taking that course, if it means going back to school, if it means upskilling so that you can settle in quicker, the better you do that. And part and parcel as well of really succeeding and settling in. Even sometimes if it means it's not giving you staying in the UK or you staying in Canada, it's time for you to relocate to a different country. Do not shy away from making those decisions. Just take your time to really establish where you are being stuck when it comes to settling in, and check your options. Also reference to what other steps people are taking, and don't shy away from taking that step. I've seen people relocate to New Zealand. I've seen people relocate to Australia, Canada, America, Finland, Germany. Not just straight away from their home country, but they relocated to the UK and then transitioned to the next country, and they're doing so well. So don't shy away from taking that big step. The fact that we came here first does not mean that probably our destiny is here. Probably our destiny is in the next country. So take that bold step. Don't shy away from taking that step. It could be the step that you need to unlock your certain level that will propel you to settling in quicker. You could be watching this video and you're in your first year, or you're in your third year like me, or your fifth year like me, like others, and you're thinking probably your journey is quite slow, or you haven't managed to settle in quicker than you thought you would. You might be the only one, and trust the process and trust all the little tiny steps that you've been making. Sometimes the pace may be slower, sometimes it may not be as quick as you want it to be, but believe you me, every step, for as long as it's going forward, it is progress, and our timelines are always different. So give yourself grace, don't be too hard on yourself. And that's all I had for you in this video to say. You will get to your goal, you will reach your target abroad. Just know that our timelines are always going to be different. Just always know and remember to readjust, to rechange the plan. If you realize you're stuck, you're not settling in as quick as you can, don't shy away from making those bold steps, those bold decisions. So that's all I had for you in this video, and let's take the conversation to the comments. Share with us at what stage of your relocation journey, of your journey abroad, of your settling in abroad are you at? Are things really going according to the pace that you would have liked? And that's all I had. And guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share these videos as we share love, light, and encouragement our journey abroad, as we hold each other's hands and move forward together and give each other inspiration, because I'm one person who believes in the diaspora journey, and I know eventually long term it's one that will give, it's one that is so full of opportunities, for as long as we are patient, for as long as we are diligent, for as long as we are focused, and we keep praying and trusting God and trusting the process. Bye for now. I'll see you in our next video.